All right, welcome back to 3 Point Firefighter. Today's guest is a very good friend of mine, Chief Matt Backeberg. Now, Matt is a firefighter from the Air Force. That's where I met him. He's now on the civilian side for the DoD as a firefighter. That's all he's done. He has been in, Maxwell, Daharan, which you've been in Maxwell Air Force Base, Daharan, in Kobar Towers, Azores, McCord. Then you went civil service, and you've been at Fairchild, Randolph, Keesler, Altus, and now what I consider one of the coolest places is Cheyenne Mountain Complex. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Matt.
Thank you, sir.
So for those who don't know, me and Matt met a long time ago when we had less gray hair. And we were in the Air Force together, and we both ended up at Daharan in Saudi Arabia and hung out there and completely annihilated in ping pong and spades and hearts. Owned, I think is what the kids say nowadays. So, Matt, tell me a little bit about where you are at in your fire department now and what you do there.
So I'm inside Cheyenne Mountain at Cheyenne Mountain Space Force Station is what we just renamed it now.
Nice.
And
I got to get a T-shirt.
we just switched over to Space Force, and again, haven't really seen anything drastically change other than the letterhead. You know, again, the weekly letterhead change that we go through.
Right.
And for the last 5-6 years, I've been on operations. I was the assistant chief of operations, and just recently moved over to the assistant chief of training for the department. So a little bit different scenario for me, Monday through Friday versus, the 48-hour shifts. But it's a good change. I think it'll be good for me. I think it's good for the family and the department.
It's got to be kind of a cool place to work too.
Yeah, I tell everybody I work in a hole, and it was cool for probably the first 2-3 months, and then you get to work and you drive a half mile into the tunnel and you're like, wow, okay, yeah, here I go, I'm going in.
Yeah.
So, but once you're in, basically for the listeners, I guess they built an aircraft carrier inside of a mountain, and they put it on springs, so the buildings can move up to 12 inches left or right and still maintain full utility power, not lose any, water or anything like that. We have 6 generators inside that provide backup power. We've received power from the city of Colorado Springs. Everything goes to our battery bay first, and then out to the users inside the mountain. We brag about being 99.999 reliable on our power supply for them.
Right.
So no matter what happens, if the city power goes away, we have the battery backup until the generators get spooled up, and then the generators provide power for the mountain.
So how does the fire department work inside a mountain? Is there actual engines and ladder trucks in there? I mean, what ambulances? I mean, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so it's pretty unique. Inside the mountain, obviously, we have reservoirs, and the reservoirs provide water for the cooling of the mountain, because with all the energy and the servers that are running inside there, the mountain would literally just heat up, and eventually stuff would overheat and start to melt. But the water goes through a big cooling tower, and that's what gives us the air conditioning per se to cool the mountain down. And we have a fire pump that's connected to that reservoir, so that if in fact we need to use water, then we can, the fire pumps come on, we hit, just like we're hitting a standpipe at your dorm or your hotel, we hook up our 3-inch hose, and that's our supply line down the hallway or down in the industrial area. And at the end of the supply line, we put our gated Ys. And if we're in the area where the fuel is, we've got, the new AFFF, because the old AFFF was terrible for everybody.
Right.
And again, it's just literally it's just your gated Y operation that you would do off the back of the truck, or up on the standpipe system on the 10th floor of a hotel building.
But it sounds like to me like friction loss is probably more important to you than maybe some of your other assignments where you had engines and stuff like that.
Yeah, and most of we've got hose cabinets or your standpipe connection spaced all over the mountain. So we've got them on every floor of all the buildings.
So for those people that don't understand how the fire department works in the Air Force, you have basically two parts to it. You have the flight line where you have aircraft that may be at your base. For example, if you're in an F-15 base, that's you're going to learn at F-15. But where you're at, it seems like completely unique. Well, let me go back. So you also have the aircraft and the flight line, but you also have structures. So you do structure firefighting and R firefighting. But where you're at, I can't. It just sounds like it's a whole different challenge as far as fire service goes.
Absolutely. And the big thing for us is a small medical. A guy falls down, dislocates his shoulder, but he was on the roof of the complex. Now, just to get him to the ambulance, I have a high angle, or I have to put him in a Stokes basket and bring him down a set of stairs. So the simplest medical emergency that you could pull up and probably pick him up, put him on a gurney and take him to the hospital turns into a pretty big operation for us. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
And we don't have the ambulance. We don't have any ALS or anything like that on station with us. So we call for an ambulance. It's about a 20-minute response for them to get inside the mountain and actually put their hands on the patient. Because again, you're coming up from the city, which is, about a 5-mile twisty, turny, 2-lane highway to get into the mountain, process through all the security, get off the rig, bring the gurney as close as they can. And now they can, start actually putting hands on the patient for me.
Now, clearly it's a top secret type kind of place where just your basic EMT people cannot go into every aspect. So if you got somebody down, and even though it's not the best thing to do to move them, you probably still have to move them to get them to a place where it's,
it
safer.
Can be. And most of the missions that are inside the mountain are able to sanitize, which is what they call it when they shut the top secret computers off, turn the screens, if they've got big monitors or whatever going, they can shut most of that down if there's a situation like that. And then if we had anybody that saw any sensitive information, obviously they'd just sign the non-disclosure agreement and we kind of press on from there.
Well, okay. So you're the training guy there. So how do you do so like for me, we have a training tower, have a training classroom, just like anywhere else. How do you go about doing your training? Again, because your mission's so specific.
Yeah. And we're just like probably every other Air Force base. Our training tower is cookie cutter. It's got the confined space trainer in the first floor. It's got the gas bed and the gas oven that we can turn on and make propane fires. On the second level, we've got the Class A fires where we can make, just a little box fire if we want to. And then the third and attic are kind of your rooms that you can move around and slide the doors for search and rescue or confined space. We also have a flashover trainer in our training area, which is probably my favorite piece of equipment that we get to use, just because, it's not something I don't think that every fire department has. And we actually bring the city of Colorado Springs, when they have a rookie class, we bring them up and let them use that trainer so that they can show their guys, it's as close as you could come to simulating flow path and, letting the fire get as out of control as you want it to get and
right.
Still keeping the firefighters safe so they can watch that. And then the occupants inside the mountain are really good about not complaining when we have, 400 feet of hose on the ground and crawling around, pretending we're searching for victims and that kind of thing. So we do, just like a regular department, you go out to the dorm and you have a structural exercise. We do the same things, just inside the mountain. So again, we go to the mechanical room, we pull our hose cart out and we roll the hose cart to the hose cabinet, hook up to the standpipe, just like we're catching a hydrant. And then we lay the hose, down the hallway, just like we would down the street. It's just 3-inch instead of 5-inch. And yeah, training is training. It's no different. It's just our operation is what we do. So that's what we train for.
Now, you've been a bunch of places, obviously. Another one I think is kind of interesting is the Azores. Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, the Azores was a pretty neat place. It's an island. It's off the coast of, if you're looking at New York and then you follow over to Portugal, right in the middle, there's a little group of islands, and that's the Azores. And then Lodges Field is the name of the Air Force base that was there. And it is just, when I was there, it was nothing more than a gas station for the whether it was the fighters going across the Atlantic or the heavies going across the Atlantic. If they needed a place to stop, then they could come in there, fuel up, stay the night, and continue on. We were an emergency punch out place for the space shuttle when it was doing its launches. So every time the space shuttle would take off, we would have to stand by, I want to say it was like 10 minutes. And once it had been in the air for 10 minutes, then it was clear of our airspace and it would end up going somewhere else if there was an emergency aboard. So
what would you do if the shuttle did have to, I mean, did you have boats and stuff, or did you just hope it hit that little island?
It was supposed to hit the little island and land on our runway. And then if that happened, then they'd fly the big 747 over and pick it up and put it on top and take it home.
So how small a base was the Azores?
Oh man. It wasn't super small by any means. You know, it wasn't a big, you know, Randolph or Nellis or anything like that. But, you know, it had a flight line. It had base housing and all of the support facilities to go along with that.
So. I heard a long time ago, I think when I was still in, I was trying to put in for that. And somebody said, oh, you don't want to go there because you lose power half the year and all this. Did you have any issues like with that?
Absolutely. You know, I was there was a hurricane in, gosh, I want to say it was November that blew through. But again, unlike the States, when a hurricane comes across a little island like that, the buildings are, you know, the big, strong cinder block buildings, and the wind blows, it rains a little bit, and the hurricane goes away. You know, when a hurricane hits the States, it's a little bit different story.
Yeah. So let's go back to where you and I met. We were obviously true warriors, heroes for the United States. I think that's how they would describe us, right?
Sure. That's what the medal on my chest says. Anyway.
In Saudi Arabia, and we worked same shift. So in Saudi Arabia, where we worked, we had Khobar Towers, which if people kind of remember, I forget who it was, but they pulled up a gas truck and blew up half Khobar Towers before we got there. Remember that? And then,
well, that was after we were there.
That was before?
No.
Really?
That was after. So it was. So we were there in 93.
Okay.
And I got to McCord in 1996-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And so between 93 and 96 is when the explosion happened.
Oh, okay.
Because there was guys at McCord Fire Department that were there when it happened.
Oh, all right. Now did you work? Yeah, you worked on the flight line, didn't you, with me?
Yes.
Okay. So we had a flight line at the King Abdulaziz Air Base, which was half of it was an international air base. Like international airport. And then the other half was for the military. And then we worked one on, one off. And then on our days off, we went back to Khobar Towers. But there was a base there too. They had the cushiest job, right? Would you not?
Yeah,
would you agree?
The structural guys did. Yeah.
Yeah. They had a cushy job. Do you remember the Oasis?
Was that the pool across the street?
Yes. Remember that?
Yeah.
They had a nice in-ground pool, and they had hamburgers, hot dogs, whatever you wanted. So on your days off, you could go there. No beer, but hey, that's what we had Bahrain for.
It was tough living.
It was. Yeah, on our days off, it was rough. And then there was another country in the Gulf called Bahrain, which you could buy alcohol for about $745,000 a beer, if I remember it correctly. Incredibly.
And we bought plenty of.
Yes, we did. And then I always remember when you came back into Saudi Arabia, they'd stop the bus, and then their soldiers would get on with, machine guns and walk up and down the aisles, making sure you weren't drunk. But, obviously we were drunk. So
always we were drunk coming back. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I tell you what, I'll post a few of our pictures when this podcast will probably go up in about a week or two. And before that, I'll put some pictures up of you and me and being heroes in the desert.
Nice.
Yeah. Heck yeah. So
do you have any from when we were in, I've got a couple, I think, from when we were at roll call out front of the station.
Oh yeah. Send me some of those and I'll add those too.
Okay.
And what I might do is just scan my stuff, send it to you, and we'll so we don't double up. So tell us about
yours, mine.
What's that?
You show me yours, I'll show you mine.
Exactly. And then we'll show the world which one's better. So tell everybody about what it was like when we were at the air base, actually on duty, where we lived, where we ate, all that stuff.
Yeah, so we lived in a metal box. They were Connex boxes.
Mm-hmm.
They had big giant air conditioner outside that blew through, what was that tube it blew in? Maybe, I was going to say 24 inches.
Yeah,
because I think we could have hit in there if we wanted to.
Yes.
No temperature control, which really didn't matter because we were in the desert. We wanted it to be cold.
Yep.
And then the Saudis had one half of the station. We had the other half of the station. Sometimes we would intermingle in the middle.
We would have one room. We had one room at the station, remember?
Yeah, it was our day room and dinner, kitchen table, everything.
Yeah.
So, and I think the biggest problem that we had was the language, as far as responding out. When we would respond to the American side,
mm-hmm.
they would have some backup standby stuff for us. And, just the communication of them being on the radio was kind of comical. But
and they had a regular like a pickup box rescue truck, kind of like we did. But do you remember how many people and how they would ride that thing out?
No.
So there were some people inside the truck, but there's also people hanging on the outside of the truck, basically riding tailboard, but there's no tailboard. They're just kind of hanging on, and they take turns, and you'd see their legs swing. Yeah, but we weren't.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then of course, and right next to our day room was the prayer room, where they would through the speaker 5 times a day, morning and throughout till night, they would do their prayers. So that was loud. I remember that. What else do you remember? Do you remember Banana Row?
Was that the where the aircraft were?
Yeah, where the ready to go aircraft were.
Yeah. And again, from what I remember of that was just seeing, stateside, when you see an F-15 or an F-4, you see the aircraft. You don't necessarily see it loaded to the hilt with weapons.
Right.
And they would be sitting there, just every spot they could put a missile, I think, had one on it. And when they would leave, they were loaded. And I remember when they come back, they were empty. And I was like, oh, something bad happened for somebody today.
Yeah. The war was over supposedly, but
yeah.
And then tell them about ICTs, hot ICTs.
Yeah. So they would, they'd come in, the aircraft would come into a parking area. And for us, we would have to process into the restricted area. And I remember the one time, I can't remember, I might've been E3 at the time, getting ready to pin on E4. And for some reason, they put me in charge of the crash truck for that standby. And we checked in like we were supposed to. And the crew chief wanted us to be on the backside of the aircraft for the standby. So we came out of the restricted area, came around to the backside of the aircraft. And as we were sitting there, all of a sudden the door flew open and the security forces, the military police, pointed M16s at myself and the driver and told us to get out because we had, obviously broke the imaginary red line that was the restricted area. And then they had to take us to jail and call out another truck for the standby. And I remember the first shirt had to come over to the cop shop and get us out. And it was all kinds of excitement. But,
I do remember that.
Yeah.
And those, I don't know if you remember, but it was like a day or two before we were hanging out with those very cops because their building was right next to ours.
Well, yeah, and the worst part is we checked in with them, and then we left and came around. Same truck, no different. I don't know if it was a 3 or a 4 or what the crash number was on the side of it, but they knew we were there. I just think they were bored and wanted to have some fun with us.
And they did. And they did.
At my dispense, yes.
Yes. So, like Matt said, we slept in these big metal boxes, and they were ice cold. I can't complain about the temperature control, but in the mornings when you get up and you'd go into the bay, to that one room we were allowed to go in, what was laying all over the floor? Do you remember every morning?
No.
Scorpions.
Oh, yes. There was all kinds of scorpions and spiders, and so yeah.
Yeah, the camel spiders.
I know. You never left your boots on the ground. You kept secure them and shook everything before you put it on. The big thing that I remember from the mornings out there was, of course, we're sleeping in the metal boxes, and we're probably I don't know, what would you say, 100 feet from the edge of the runway.
Oh yeah, yeah, we were right on it.
And every morning there must have been no less than 40 aircraft that would take off. And so you're thinking you're going to sleep, and at 4 a.m, the jets are taking off with full afterburners right outside your metal box, just rattling your teeth.
Yep.
So the only thing you could do is get up, get a cup of coffee, and go watch the aircraft take off. And I remember watching the afterburners literally bounce off the runway as they would pull up, because it was dark and they were leaving. And then the other thing that was pretty neat about it was watching the different aircraft leave. So the A6 Intruder would leave, which from my understanding was kind of the missile jamming, radar jamming aircraft. Mm-hmm. And then you'd get the British Tornadoes that would take off. And then our aircraft would start to go, and it would be the F4s, because they were the bombers if there was a missile site that they picked up. And then the attack aircraft would go off last, which would be the F-15s and F-16s.
Right. And remember, they would, a lot of them would pick up, if they were going in pairs, they were picking up the stealth fighter because it had no guns. So right. they would take off to support the F-117.
And they kept those up north in Saudi somewhere, I believe. They weren't at our base.
Yeah, they weren't at our base. So there were two guys that worked out all the time. One guy was tall, 6 foot something, very muscular. And then there's another guy that was real short. Remember him? And he was, So they would work out every day. They'd hang out and go on top of the roof and suntan and Saudi sun. And we called them the GQ Power Buff twins. So the big guy lived in my apartment. And I love telling this story. So MWRS, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Services, was pumping cable TV out to everybody. So you could watch basic stuff, or you could rent VHS tapes. So one day I come back, I guess you and I had been out doing something. I come back into my apartment, and the bigger GQ Power Buff twin was on the couch. Now, he wasn't moving, he wasn't talking, but he had rented Aladdin from Disney. So I sit there and I'm watching him, and I'm watching the movie, and he doesn't say a word. He doesn't get up to use the bathroom. He stays completely quiet, fixated on watching Aladdin. So near the end of Aladdin, there's this great big part of a castle falls and rolls down a hill after Aladdin. So there's one window, and it keeps rolling around. So Aladdin times it just right and ducks in that window when it rolls over top of him. So the taller GQ Power Buff twin said, yeah, right. Like that could ever happen. And I stopped and I looked at him. I said, the talking monkey and the flying carpet, you're okay with? But that was pushing it too far? He goes, yeah, it would never happen.
The worst part is with 3 kids, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, it was just funny that he was watching it anyway. And he's the one that wanted to be, he didn't want to be a fireman. He wanted to be a admin. He wanted to be secretary somewhere.
Nice.
Yeah. So I hope if he's listening, Mr. Power Buff twin, hope you found your calling and you're working in a dentist office. Yeah, exactly. So tell me some more stuff. What else? Tell me about some of the other bases you've been at.
So again, 9 different Air Force bases in 30 years now. Surprisingly enough, yesterday was my 30th anniversary of joining the military. So kind of one of those special days you look back on and you kind of go, wow, I left 30 years ago. This is crazy.
Congratulations.
But yeah, so again, Maxwell, the Azores, Daharan with you. And I went from Maxwell over to Daharan with you. Mm-hmm. From there, I went up to McCord. That's where I got out of the service, was at McCord, and got hired.
You were kicked out, right?
No, I was actually. It's funny because in the years when I got out, I had enlisted for 4, and then I re-upped for another 4. And at the time they were doing early outs. So I got out at 7 years, and immediately got picked up over at Fairchild as a civilian. And while I was there, I met my wife, got married. She was active duty. And so from the next probably 20 years, I followed her around with her career. And she retired in 2015, and the Air Force Academy was her last assignment. So that's we've been in Colorado Springs since 2008.
Okay.
And So when I came to Colorado Springs, I came as a GS7 driver, operator, engineer for the civilian section. Went over into the prevention section for a little while, was a fire inspector, came back to the floor as GS9 station captain, moved up to be the assistant chief of operations. And now I'm over into the training section now.
So out of all the jobs you've had, what's been your favorite?
I'll be honest, it was prevention.
Really?
Not necessarily the prevention chief, because he has to go to a bunch of the meetings and put up with a bunch of stuff, justify all the, write-ups and stuff that we do. But as the fire inspector, I really enjoyed walking around the base, being part of Fire Prevention Week, just the interaction with the people versus the normal shift firefighter. You come out of the station, interact with the base populace, once or twice, maybe a week. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, you're just in the station unless there's a call. So I liked being out and about and enjoying the people.
And one thing about living on a base is you don't have a ton of fires. Not this way it used to be, at least my experience. There wasn't a ton of fires because the prevention did such a good job, and they had a lot of control, not just of businesses, per se, but if you wanted to live on base and base housing, you had to follow certain rules. So prevention was the biggest reason why the firefighters didn't have a lot to do.
Well, and I think that a lot of it goes in with the building construction too. The military has a ton of control over what type of structure is built on the base. Mm-hmm. And so I know even with like the Burger King fires that we've had, a lot of that is just due to construction and the ventilation systems and, stuff like that, just being installed wrong. And that's what leads to the fire in the end. And you're right. Most of the fires that happen are smaller, single room and contents. You get your kitchen fires here and there. And even big aircraft fires don't happen that often. If you've been at a base that had a significant crash in your career, it's kind of an anomaly. So
it is. And it's something you never want to see.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. As a firefighter, you kind of want to go to burning buildings. You kind of want to make those wrecks and stuff. But talking to a lot of people that have made those, we've had a couple on Shepherd when I was there, and it's nothing at all you want to see, and nothing can prepare you for it. I mean, it's just gross. That's all it is. It's just a large area of gross.
Yeah,
for lack of better words. Now, so there is some funny things from Dhahran I do want to bring up. So where we were at on base, it was considered top secret. We weren't allowed to take pictures and stuff like that, although some people did. You mentioned the tornadoes, which it was kind of funny. They told you not to take pictures of the tornadoes, the British aircraft. But these same aircraft were flying above the cities and all that stuff anyway, and they looked completely the same as any other tornado. Because the reason they wouldn't take pictures because it was electronics. It wasn't really, it was a fighter, but its main role was electronics over there. Said, don't take pictures of it. So I know we never took pictures of it, but there might have been somebody that took pictures of it, but you couldn't distinguish it from another fighter. You could not tell it was electronics, anything. But my favorite thing is over by Banana Row. So Banana Row was where they kept a lot of aircraft, like you said, completely fueled up, completely loaded, and they're ready to go in 10 minutes. They'd be in the air in 10 minutes. So behind Banana Row was the Patriot missiles. Do you remember that?
Yes.
So when you get to a new base and they show you everything, they tell you the do's and the don'ts. And they said, whatever you do not take pictures of these Patriot batteries. Don't do it. Yes, sir. No problem. Our first trip. Yeah. Our first trip to Bahrain, we're driving down the highway, and the highway is right next to Banana Row and those Patriot batteries. We're like, we can't take pictures, but there's literally a highway right here. You could see the back end of everything. And I remember thinking, that's the military to a T. Whatever you do, don't take pictures. We don't anybody know they're here. You put them next to an interstate. So I think people are going to know.
And I never did see any of those launch off. Did you?
No, not one. Not one. I remember we had just had an EOD guy come give us a class on not using radios around Banana Row. We made a run, and one of the guys from the crash truck, a guy named Chuck, I can't remember the rest of his name, but his name's Chuck, and I can see his face. He worked on our shift. He went down Banana Row, and he found, it was a hung ordnance, I believe, and you see him, and we're way back. And you see him pick up his radio and he keys it up, and we all just kind of duck down like, holy shit, Chuck, don't use your radio.
We're all going to die.
We're all going to die because of Banana Row and Chuck.
Oh, man.
Good times. Good times. Also, whenever the king was in country, we were loved and we could go out into the cities. But when he was gone and his brother, the prince, was in charge, then they would tell you, don't go out. Especially the women, don't go out in the city, stay on base. Remember that?
Yep. And at the time when we were there, we had to go out in uniform.
Yes. So everybody knew who we were.
Right.
Which was always handy.
Didn't make any sense to me at all. Yeah.
No. I think we'd stick out anyway. And you and I love to go to the mall.
Yep. Gold shopping,
the Suki Mall, SOUQ, I believe. Remember that?
Yep.
It was nothing but every single store was jewelry. There wasn't one other store in it. It was 4 stories tall. I think I got a picture of it. I'll show it to you. And they were insulted if you just bought it. It didn't haggle.
Yes.
But they were also insulted if I'll give you a nickel for it. You go.
You couldn't lowball them.
Yeah, you couldn't lowball them. It was that sweet spot that I just never quite figured out. Now, was it with you when we found one of our last days, Shakey's Pizza? You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So they're over in Saudi Arabia, they had Wendy's and McDonald's and all that stuff, Pizza Hut. It was always a little bit different. It didn't taste like Wendy's pizza, any of that stuff. It tasted close, but like the Wendy's burgers were like Confederate gray. They were horrible.
Yes.
And then, but one of our last days, we found Shakey's Pizza, and it was exactly like Shakey's Pizza. It was fucking awesome. And it was like $4, I think. It was dirt cheap.
Yeah. And I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, and we had a Shakey's Pizza right up the road from my house. So it was crazy to me that I went over to the desert and found a Shakey's pizza. Also.
That's exactly right. And also, for those that are listening, if you walked into a Wendy's, they had 2 sides. They had if you were married and if you were single. And you weren't allowed to go into the married side if you were single. And you weren't allowed to be on the single side if you were married. So, and you couldn't look at the women. Not that you could see anything, but I remember quite a few times guys yelling at us. Oh, and we had our I'm a Dumb American card. Do you still have yours?
No, I do not.
I still have my I'm a Dumb American card. So,
and I don't know for sure that's what it really said.
I know. I don't know. I know what it said in English, but you flip it over in Arabic. I don't know what it said. But basically, whenever you screwed up, you had to carry this a laminated card that says, I'm a guest of, King Abdulaziz or whatever. Forgive me if I didn't know your traditions and all that stuff, but I'm a Dumb American card. Still got mine.
And I remember the tablecloths on the Shakey's Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
They look just like the headdresses that the Saudis would wear.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and we went to swim in the Persian Gulf, and the way they do the beach. Do you remember how they would do the beach, how they would dress for the beach?
Exactly. I know the women. Yeah.
Yeah. They would wear the same thing, the long headdress. The guys would wear the white thing on their head and the full white robe, and they're just hanging out on the beach.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you remember how crystal clear the water was?
Yes, it was very clear. We would go, there's this little island that had a little snack bar and everything. And what me and Matt would do is you could rent snorkel stuff, I believe. And we would jump off. The current was so strong, you would jump off on one side of the island and you could snorkel all the way down to the other side of the island without really any effort whatsoever. Get back on the bottom of the island and walk straight back up. I mean, it was a lot of fun. There really was a lot of cool stuff to do there. But I remember the Persian Gulf, it was super clear. I've got pictures of coral and stuff that you and I, when we went diving down in there, it was kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually brought a piece back with me. I don't know if I was supposed to or not. Probably not.
You probably weren't. Now you got to sign a piece of paper and get shot in the face.
Exactly.
All over coral.
But I had that for years and I actually started a saltwater tank. And that was probably one of the first pieces I put in there was that piece of coral.
Straight from the Persian Gulf.
Yep. I don't know where it is now today, but for a while I kept it.
You kept it. Yeah. I remember there was the other mall, the mall that you and I were not allowed to pass urine in, which I've got that picture. I'll put that up on my 3 Point Firefighter Facebook page. It said, as soon as you walk in this one particular mall, not the Gold Mall, not the Suki Mall, but it said, please do not pass urine here. So naturally, me and Matt, right off the bat, decided to take some pictures of us passing urine there. But they had a music store that was nothing but cassettes, top to bottom, left to right, neck to nut, stem to stern, nothing but cassettes. And they were all copies of famous albums at the time. So I remember, and they were like $1, a couple dinars, whatever. I bought a ton of those to take home. And as soon as we leave and we start flying in, I think we landed in Pittsburgh, they announce if you have any illegal contraband, you're going to be searched, you're going to get in trouble. Military police is waiting. So I ended up throwing away all these cassettes in the shitter of a 737 or whatever I was on. And I just kind of stuffed them down in there. I kind of regret that because when we landed, nobody was there to check anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do remember the flight was just awful because we left from, I think it was Philly at the time. Mm-hmm. And we flew from Philly to Germany, mm-hmm. and then from Germany into Dhahran. And in Germany, they let us get off the plane, but we were in maybe a hallway. That was all they for customs.
I was with you on that, but we didn't know each other then.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting in that seat going, oh my gosh, are we ever going to get there?
We were there for we were in Germany, and all we could do is sit there in the little gate crowded with hundreds of other guys just sitting there.
Yes.
So, and it wasn't like they said, hey, do you want a snack or anything? No, you just sat there until they were ready. It was the same plane. They just had to refuel it and clean it up. And we already drank all the beer way, way before we got anywhere near Germany. So they had to load up the beer again. And then when we flew into the airspace of Saudi airspace, they announced it. And all of a sudden you saw F-16s on each side of our commercial airliner.
Yeah. So, and you remember when we landed? So we landed and the guys were leaving at the same time we landed.
Yes.
So basically we normally would do shift change in the morning, and these firefighters were like, okay, so here's the keys to the truck. This is where you live, and we'll see you later.
Yep.
And you figure it out from there.
Yeah. So that literally is what happened.
Yeah.
And then we had to do hose test in 100-degree heat because they did hose test. The Evolution before us did hose test the rotation, but they didn't write anything down. And that chief that I told you about, I think his name is Greg Buchanan. He said, we got to have it documented. So we had to hose test all that stuff again in 110-degree heat. That was miserable. It
was fun. Yep. No, do you remember? I remember the pool out by the flight line station. Mm-hmm. You remember trying to get that going and fill it up? And
I remember you did a lot of work to that.
Though, did we?
What's that?
Did we ever actually succeed getting water in that?
You got it cleaned up. I think you got it painted blue, and then it never got a drop of water.
I didn't think so.
No, I don't remember why that happened, but it was right next door to the fire department. Oh, we got to tell this story. So I'm going to tell part of the story, and then I'll let Matt pick up this story. He already knows what story I'm talking about. So me and Matt really got along pretty well with the other Saudis. We were told not to mix and mingle, but me and Matt, it's either that or sit in a little room all day. So me and Matt would play ping pong with them and talk to them best we could and eat fruit with them. They always had fresh fruit every morning. But they brought a goat in one day, and I guess I was thinking it was, there's one firefighter selling a goat to another firefighter. So I go over there and I'm petting this goat, and and it's like a petting zoo, and I'm having a big old time. So what happened after that, Matt?
The Saudis brought the goat into the stalls. They put it over the stall drain, and they cut its throat.
Right then and there.
And right then and there, they bled him out, and they proceeded to skin him and cook every part of him
for lunch.
And they put it all in a great big bowl. And when I say great big bowl, this thing was probably 3 feet across. It was a big bowl.
And it had eyeballs and asshole, everything.
Everything. And when they were done cooking it and preparing it, they handed you a piece of pita bread. And you were supposed to throw the bread in, pinch it, and whatever meat came up inside that bread was what you were supposed to eat.
Yes.
I was scared. I didn't know what I was getting.
Yeah, you might have got asshole and eyeballs.
You just didn't know. Yeah, it was scary.
Now, I think you and me were the only one partaking in it. No, the Greg Buchanan was there too, if that was his name, our assistant chief or whatever. I remember him doing that. Oh, yeah, that was gross. Guys just petting it, and they stuck it, they stepped on its head and just sliced its throat, and blood went everywhere, and lunch was getting cooked.
Yep. So, and then the other thing I remember was sitting out in front of the station in the evenings. They break out the blankets and they're super thick tea, and they had the hookah pipe?
Big hookah pipe. Yes.
Yep. So, and I was always scared of that. I didn't know what it was, if it was truly just tobacco or if there was other stuff mixed in. So I stayed away.
I remember we were told to stay away from that.
Yes.
When they enjoyed themselves on the front apron, just you guys hang out here for a little while. So,
Yeah.
and then of course the camel spiders, those were horrifying, because I do remember when you're doing the pool thing, it's surrounded by desert, like right around that
Yeah.
pool, a lot of sand. And we were like, yeah, this is great, but we're going to take our shoes off or whatever, jump in the pool. And one of those spiders, they would basically like stay under the sand, and then they would pop up and do that. And remember, they caught one in the alarm room. And it was an old gray garbage can like you'd see in elementary school. And I forget the guy. He was one of our guys, and he's the one that caught the scorpion and painted it red because he was upset that the scorpions weren't red. He killed it. He froze it. It's painted it red, took pictures of it. But they caught a camel spider, and it was in that can, and it was so big and heavy, you could hear it clicking on that metal can. That was gross. And he froze that. And I think he ended up taking pictures with that too. He was a weird dude.
Yeah, there's just no reason.
No.
There's no reason to mess with stuff like that.
No.
Just leave it alone.
Yeah, I don't think I slept on the flight line well at all, even a little bit.
Yeah. I'm the same way with rattlesnakes too, though. I don't mess with them at all.
Yeah. So I know you're from Washington State, and I've never really cared that much. I've kind of been, it's not that I don't want to go to Washington State, but I probably would never, go vacation there. Same with Oregon. Well, because I work with ISFSI and go around teaching, they have a lot of business out there. So I've been going out there a lot, and I'm in love with that place. I think Washington is just crazy, beautiful state. Oregon's beautiful. I will say this, as much as I've been out there, I've never seen a raindrop. Not one.
So you're going in July and August?
I'm going again in 2.5 weeks. I'm going to Bellingham. So
okay. I was going to say, because if you've been there September to June, you will see rain, because that's all they get.
Yeah. Well, I've been there, and they're like, sorry guys, you're gonna have to tell people that it rains here all the time, because that's what we're known for. I'm like, never seen a raindrop. Seattle, Portland, the Dalles, Oregon, you name it. But I do love it. I think the people there, sometimes you can go to a place and you pick up on the people, the vibe. It's like, oh, there's some pretty cool people. Obviously Kentucky, great guys, great people there. But Oregon and Washington, man, it's not only is it beautiful, but everybody there is nice. They're just friendly. That's just not the case.
Well, they're all hot.
Well, yeah, they can. Well, the very first time I went there, so the class that we teach is 1403 live fire. It's to teach instructors how to teach it safely according to the standard. It's a 3-day class. And the very first time I went to Oregon, where it's legal, right? Is it Oregon? Yeah, both of them are legal. So they got
both of them.
Yeah. So
and same here in Colorado. So.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait till it's here. I mean, I can't smoke weed now, but it becomes legal and I retire. Oh man, I'll be like the Big Lebowski. But so I'm introducing myself day one, and these are people that are from all over the country. They're not country, but around the area. They're not all from one department. And I ask them, and I go, hey, so I noticed weed's legal out here, and I see a bunch of dispensaries and all that. And so are you guys allowed to smoke weed? And like they practice it in unison, they all go, no. And I'm like, you guys practice that? And they start laughing. But because it's still federally illegal, they're not allowed to partake of it. But yeah, every time I go there, I see those places. And the little coffee shops, that's another thing I've noticed out there. They got like drive-through coffee shops that you don't go in. You just literally drive through, like a Rally's or a Checkers, whatever you call those little places. And those places are everywhere. And some of the best coffee out there too. Love it. Love that stuff.
And a lot of them look like a tough shed. They just converted to a coffee shop.
Yeah. Like the old, do you remember the old photo mats where you drop off your film?
Yes.
That's exactly what it looks like. You can drive up on both sides. And there's one called, it's local. I don't know if it's called Sasquatch. No, Bigfoot. It's called Bigfoot Coffee. Honey hush, that is the stuff. Great firefighters. I tell you another thing I noticed out there is very tactic-driven fire departments all over the place. I've learned a lot. I mean, of course, look who's out there. I mean, you got Aaron Fields out there, Snodgrass out there. You got a lot of people within driving distance giving conferences and stuff like that. But no, it's a great area. So what else? The mountains. I mean, Mount Rainier, Mount Hood.
And when I see Mount Rainier in pictures, it's still, again, grew up seeing that mountain every day, and I love seeing pictures of it.
Yeah, it's beautiful out there. Just absolutely beautiful. Again, I never thought I'd want to go out there, but I cannot recommend it enough. Never been to the coast there yet. So every time I think of the coast, I think of Goonies. So.
I mean, what are you talking about? I don't know. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, you cry at the Goonies every single time. Lars Chunk, Baby Ruth.
And I know the Mount St. Helens. So I was a kid when Mount St. Helens blew.
Uh-huh. Now, how far away were you from Mount St. Helens?
So we were in Olympia, and so that would probably be maybe an hour and a half drive. Mm-hmm. But we were motorcycle riding, and I woke up covered in ash. We were just sleeping in sleeping bags under the trees. Mm-hmm. And I thought it had snowed because it was, just a white, pure, fine ash. And again, didn't know any different. And then got out and got on the road and got some radio signal and figured out that the mountain had blown.
Wow.
So, but years later now, and when we went back with the kids, it had grown up and 20 years of growth, and it wasn't nearly as impressive anymore, but still kind of neat that the wife and I had the memory of what it used to look like. If you get a chance, go see it.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to. That's the only thing I've been hating out there is I don't make extra time. I need to have an extra day before I fly out just to go do that stuff. Again, it's something that you can see in pictures and stuff like that, but to you actually standing on the ground and you can see it. And now there was a bar, a friend of mine, it was downtown Portland that you could go to. I think it's called City Bar. And you go all the way to the top and you can see the three main mountains. You can see Mount St. Helens. I guess it's Mount Hood, Mount Rainier, those three. You can see often there's one place you can see all three by walking around the bar. It was really cool. Really cool.
Yeah. And I know we've got a spot, and they call it Four Sisters, because you can see if you take those three mountains and then add Mount Bachelor, and that's up north, kind of by Bellingham, where you're going to be going. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just spectacular views from up in the mountains there.
Yeah.
So
cool. Well, brother, I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed talking to you. I think what you do, I've always liked what you do, obviously, because, well, hell, I did it. But being at Cheyenne Mountain Complex to me is just super cool. And that's what I like about this podcast. And I get to talk to people like you that do something that's more than just going into a firehouse every day and putting their gear on an engine. I think that's really neat. So, brother, it's good talking to you. I appreciate you being on my podcast, and I look forward to bugging you some more.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you, man.